Welcome.
I was said to driving to the
I
rest.
know, me too. It's the our awareness thing.
Gosh, it is. You're right. It's our awareness. Okay. Welcome
To your morning cup.
with iBenz Academy.
I'm Kara.
And I'm Ash.
And we're Kash.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
We had a funny moment here. We might add it at the end as a blooper, but we almost said, welcome to Driving to the Rest. Because you know it's one of our favorite podcasts.
With our favorite hosts.
With our favorite hosts, yes. That's really funny. Our awareness in action. Becoming a we.
Yep.
All right. So we are in week 3 of the Instant Manifestation Workshop.
Oh my gosh, that's so freaking cool.
It's awesome.
Third workshop, starting our third week.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. This group is powerful.
They are. And it's been incredible, I think, transformation for everybody involved in growth and learnings. And it's so cool to see how, like, every time it's kind of like the Shaman Shack. Every group has a different energy. It's like the Shaman Shack. Every time you go there, it's like something's changed, and it's a living thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's sentient in itself, and it has its own like changes and dynamic aspects. And so even with the workshop and the material and the people and everything, it just that changes time after time.
Yeah,
so it's pretty exciting.
It's super exciting, and one of the things you said about, you know, our awareness and becoming a we, that's really like what the workshop is about. It's working as a group, as a healthy group. What does that mean? How do we co-create together? And it's as simple as like, okay, how do we put together questions, or how do we give feedback on each other's work and all this stuff? It's just all about learning to co-create together in a high frequency way.
You know, when we first started talking about groups, it was I think in the second
2017 no 20
it was the second retreat that we attended,
2019
right?
May 2019
at the Shaman Shack.
Yes.
And I think that was kind of, at least for me, that was the first real like dipping my toes into the pool of we and consciousness of us, and being consciously aware of that. And we've grown so much. It's just incredible. And it's incredible to see it with the students as well, right? Just like diving right into the collaboration and co-creation, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's true. We've really been practicing those skills over the last couple of years, both individually in our day-to-day lives, as community members, as co-creators of, say, iBenz Academy, but also as participants and co-creators in Walk With Me Now, and all of these collectives where we're experimenting and practicing that, because truth be told, we need the practice.
We do.
We have to remember, the illusion of separation is an illusion, and we need to go back to our natural state, because the high frequency paradigm is that group energy. It is. And that's why.
For sure. It's the healthy balance, right, between the group and the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, one thing that came up for us today, we really started, we being Kash, started exploring and talking about patterns and negative patterns that we have, inspired by conversations that we've had with the Instant Manifestation Workshop crew. And so today we want to look at some of that. Let's talk about negative patterns in our life, and what have we done about them? How have they shown up?
Yep. Yeah.
I don't have them. I never had them.
We're perfect, right?
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and a big part of it is also becoming consciously aware that these things happen, right? And it's important not to demonize ourselves or berate ourselves, especially when we do feel like we are falling into a negative pattern. And the important thing is like, oh, we spot it. Okay, how do we respond, right? Because I know for me, one of my negative patterns is seeing that if I'm falling into a negative pattern, that's exactly what I do. I belittle myself. It's an ego reaction of like, oh, I'm not good enough. Guilty. Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see that. And I was like, wait. That's a negative pattern about seeing negative patterns, which is kind of ironic.
Reinforcing the negative patterns.
Yes. It's almost like a bad habit, if you've ever heard that phrase. It's like a habit that you kind of do unconsciously, or maybe sometimes consciously, but you do it anyways.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the dynamic we've been looking at this morning.
One of the ways I think for me that it's shown up is where, and Inelia has said this before, it's like, okay, something's gone on in your life, right? We're going to talk more abstract right now, but we'll bring it into some stories soon. But something's gone on in your life, and you are the common denominator.
Yep.
It sucks. This happened. And oh wait, but I remember this happened last time, and then this happened like 5 years ago. And then I was and it's like, interesting. Okay, so you're the common denominator, right? And the players in it have changed. They maybe even the environment, the scenery, the setting, the topic has maybe even changed too. But you have stayed consistent. So then oh, that's my negative program or my negative pattern that I'm bringing in there that is playing out in this situation. So it's a really good telltale sign that there's a negative pattern running.
Right. And even just being able to spot the fact that we are the common denominator in some of our stories, especially our negative stories, that in and of itself is empowering, because then we can see, oh, I'm the one creating this. It's not like a blame thing or a victim aggressor thing. Oh, they did this to me. It's like, oh, yeah, this keeps happening over and over and over, but the characters in the scene have changed, and yet, okay, so it's me. All right.
And not even to blame. It's like, I'm responsible.
Yep. Responsible.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. So that in of itself, amazing.
Yeah.
Step towards empowerment.
Big difference, right? Already right there. That's like the first step.
Yep.
Identify that it's a program or a pattern.
Yeah.
I know in the past I've always been, I've talked about it here many a times, and I've always had an affinity for working, and I don't, it's very rare in my life that I had just one job or, just did one thing. And whenever I did work, I would work very hard, and I had all these programs I was carrying around it. Some of them were really great. It made me a fabulous employee. I got a lot done. I'd work long hours. It was probably wonderful for people who worked with me in the past. Except there's like this consistent situation dynamic I had with my managers, where it was like they were, in my view, they were incompetent, they were overworking me, they weren't supportive, they were blah, 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 all the things, right? And so because of that, I had to work harder, and I was more of a martyr, and then I was, just all the other like snowball effect of where this goes, right? Is not good.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point I was in a job that, actually it's with the company I'm with now. And this was like a few years back. And I was like, I really want to leave this job. Like, we lost 3 employees, and I'm doing all of their work, and it's not right. And my boss at the time keeps telling me she supports me, and she's going to help me, but she's like done 0 to support me and to help me. And this just isn't right. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, blame. I can't do anything else because this job. I don't have enough time because of this job. I'm feeling and engaging in low frequency because of this job. Blah, 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 right? And then it was looking at that program or that pattern and seeing, oh, wait, in my last job, this happened too. I took on multiple people's duties and responsibilities, and I worked really hard and got it all done and did it well, but at sacrificing of myself in that time, right? Then, oh, wait, and actually, I remember that other job I had. It's like the same thing. And, and the people just, like, my managers just kept piling the work on and piling the work on, and I just kept doing it all, right? And so I was like, oh, interesting. This is when, you got good allies to help you see this, or you just start paying attention, maybe through journaling or just self-reflection, but paying attention and become curious.
Yes.
What is going on?
Yeah.
Why am I manifesting this? So at the time, my reaction was, I'm going to quit my job.
Right.
Because it's making me low frequency, because it's exhausting me, because it's blah, 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 right? And the truth is, wait a minute, hard pill to swallow. It's not my job. It's me. I'm the common denominator.
Yep.
So The other part to that is, if in that energy I quit my job, I would then find another job that would fulfill that same pattern, right? And it would set it up perfectly that, in that new job, maybe it wouldn't start out that way, but then all of a sudden, I start taking things on, and there's probably things that I'm doing that I'm not even conscious of, and opening the door to take on more work. To, somebody left, I'll help, and then slowly it just starts to pile on, and then this, that, and the other, and it fulfills the pattern that I had running. So becoming aware of that was huge, because then it became, instead of, okay, I'm looking for a new job, it was, okay, I'm going to do my job differently, and I'm going to behave differently. I'm going to basically do the opposite of what I do. I'm not going to volunteer to help on everything, because I see that there's like something that needs to be done. Doesn't mean I'm responsible, because, some things I have more of like strategic perspective maybe than somebody on the team. And so I share that, and then I do it, but because I see it doesn't mean I'm responsible to carry it out. Or, all the list of the things that I was doing that was not supportive, right? It was not what I was actually wanting to experience, but it was the creation that I was making for myself. It was the experience that I was creating. So, yeah, it turned out in that same job, right? This was probably 3 years ago, maybe even a little bit more. I've now been working at the company for 6 years. So it's changed massively, huge. I'm supported, and I've got a work-life balance, and I know when how to navigate the situations where I'm not martyring myself. Maybe it's like delegating work, asking for help, or just not taking something on, and like drawing the line. Okay, my plate is full. I'm going to do this. So if you want me to do something else, you're going to have to take something off my plate, so we can add something else on it, and having more of those direct, conscious conversations and interactions with the people and the work. And all of that is to say, like, at the end of the day, it's like, I'm high frequency because I'm behaving and responding in a high frequency way, right? Yeah. So the job didn't matter. It was me.
Yeah. Exactly. This is such a great example of what empowerment looks like in the day-to-day, because it's so easy for us to blame our environment or our friends or our coworkers or whatever about the situations that happen to us, and that's that whole victim-aggressor thing. But what I love about your story is that you saw it. You're like, wait, I'm the common denominator. And then got curious about it too. That's such an important point too, of like, how is
it helped that I had a really good ally in mentoring named Inelia Benz.
Yes. That's part of it too, right?
Right.
Yeah. Manifested some really great allies and co-creators to help you see and expand your awareness. And this is why we don't work alone.
Yeah.
Right? So that we can get some additional insight and perspective on maybe some of our blind spots or our repeating patterns that we don't always see. But also when it does happen, getting curious about it and reflecting on like, how is this serving me? Like, what is about being super busy all the time? What is that doing, I know for me that's come up a lot too.
Oh yeah, that's a really great question for sure. Like that martyr program, when you're used to it, it's super satisfying because nobody can do it but me, right? Like it's very egoic, and like it's super low frequency. But that's for example. Yeah. It also, right, like, so why do you create like a busy schedule that you don't have time to do other things? It's like, what aren't you doing? Right. Connecting with your community. Yeah. Spending time outside, taking care of your physical body, or doing things that support your whole like being rather than just one aspect of it.
Yeah. There's such a great class that goes into this in great depth, which is the limitations class of how are they serving us, basically. And there's some really good tools in that class to look at in regards to like why do I have this program running to keep me busy all the time, or that energy of just do it myself, or the martyr or whatever. Because I mean, the truth is that we program ourselves. We're the ones deciding our experience. And a lot of the times it's unconscious, right? But when it becomes conscious, whoa, that's a huge game changer. And I also love your story about how once you saw it, you responded. Like, I'm going to change how I act and operate at work, right? And then you took ownership and did things differently. Like, it wasn't this passive thing, because that's not what the new paradigm is about. It's about doing it, being proactive, and living it in the day-to-day, even with the smallest or biggest of things, right? And 3 years later or 6 years later or whatever it's been, it's like a whole different experience.
Yep.
Amazing.
And when you don't have agreement to those low frequencies engagements anymore, sometimes the players will change, right? Because if those players, if that's all they're looking for, and probably more often than not, it's unconscious. But if that's what they're looking for in their dynamic, it's not going to work, Like, they're not going to be able to be a part of the story. And that's going to naturally kind of resolve itself. They'll go elsewhere. Something will happen. And that happened at my work. The people who I was having, like, the most challenge with, they all left within, like, months after I started becoming conscious and responding and not reacting in old patterns and behaviors.
Absolutely. And when we start to consciously change from react to respond, it's amazing how that in and of itself can change reality on, like, all levels or small levels. But it's incredible. For me, a big negative pattern that I've had throughout my life is this program of perfectionist. And there's a lot of flavors of it, but one of the programs is relatable to your story in the sense of, I'll just do it myself, or, I can't trust anyone else to do it because they won't do it right, and it's got to be perfect, and, all these things. And it was like this unconscious thing that was running, like, I'll just do it myself or whatever, or it has to be a certain way. And then going back to the group energy, the dynamic, like that program, that negative pattern is a great way of playing out the lone wolf and even the dark light paradigm in a lot of ways, because it's this like us versus them energy and separation and all these things, right? And then also I looked at it and got curious of like, okay, well, why? Because there were some times where, sure, I wanted like a picture or something to be pretty in a certain way, or other times it was just like projections or assumptions. I'm like, they won't do it right, in righteousness. So going back to that, get curious about it, and how is this limitation serving me? The limitation of perfection. And honestly, like, it wasn't ever a real thing.
Right.
There's like no such thing. I mean, I guess you could get all abstract or meta or Buddhist about it, but we won't go into that. But we'll say I never achieved the perfection state, but it was a great negative pattern that would come up in many different aspects of my life, whether it was work or relationship or physical body or whatever. And it was a great limitation to stay separate. Yeah. And funnily enough, over the last, 3 or 4 years, we've been practicing the group energy and co-creating as a healthy, conscious, awake, aware group in various forms. It's like, oh, wow, when we have the strength of the group contributing, it's way better than what I would have done on my own. Different skills, different perspectives, and there's just more of it, Yep. So it was a very useful negative pattern, useful to stay small, to stay separate. That limitation definitely served me for sure. It was great at its job. But I decided consciously, this isn't really resonant anymore. And I'm going to change it and reprogram myself. And there you go. And the tools, there are a lot of tools that can be useful for this. I did have firewalls related to it. Also egoic stuff. Took the limitations class, and even like control manipulation class. There's tons of tools that can go into this, but point being is, taking that proactive approach and really changing behavior. Like, that's key.
Yep. Once we acknowledge that we are creating everything that we're experiencing. We are manifesting that. Once we like really acknowledge that, then that's super empowering right there. And then you have a say, right? And no longer are you giving your power away to this negative pattern, or to my mom who gave me that pattern, or to my past life of blah, 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 you know? And I love that, you know, you said it so clearly that curiosity is key, because we're not psychoanalyzing to figure out, why do I have this pattern? Because from this perspective and this work that we're doing, it doesn't focus on that, because that's irrelevant.
Yeah,
what it's focusing on is there's a pattern, and it's not supporting me to be embodying the high frequency new paradigm on the planet and to be empowered. In fact, it's disempowering me. And when we become conscious of that and we stop looking at the why, like as in, like, yes, there's a why, how is this serving me? That you can start to learn more about it, but we're not saying, why did this pattern start? Because that's just not relevant. We start looking at, okay, so do I want to keep it or not? Yes or no? Am I going to keep it? Or am I going to drop it? You know? And then it's like, okay, yeah, this pattern isn't working. I'm going to drop it. And drop it. Now, you don't have to worry about that. It's like, move on. And to drop it, you don't need to go into the story. You don't need to go into all the other stuff. But that too can also be enticing. You know, it's kind of like the pattern itself is, there can be physical addiction to it. There can be just like mental, emotional addiction, all these things that can come up with the pattern itself. And the process of just dropping it and not going into the why can also be dropping that pattern to analyze and to go into like, oh, well, because this one lifetime I was in Egypt. And then when I was in Egypt, like, you know.
This happened.
Yeah.
Oh, so significant.
And it's like, whatever. Like,
irrelevant. You're here
irrelevant.
now.
It's not a part of this.
Yeah.
If you are going to speak to somebody who's like a psychoanalysis and that you're like on their couch, I don't know if they do that, if they're really on a couch, but you know, you're doing that. Okay, sure, because that's what you're focusing on, but that's not this work.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing here. That's not this empowerment work with the iBenz method.
Yeah, exactly. It's more about looking at the bundle of energy and responding to that bundle of energy rather than saying, ooh, how did that bundle of energy get there? And is it significant? Like, that's a different thing. Yeah. Like, that part's irrelevant. The point is it's there. You spotted it. Good job. That is like a big part of the work just right there. But then it's what comes after that. What do you do? Yeah. What do you consciously choose? And that's the difference.
So, because we don't create in isolation and because we are a group, I remember a time when Inelia said something to the effect of, like, just be aware that if you are co-creating with somebody and you're stepping into their negative pattern, don't react in the way that they need you to react to fulfill that pattern, right? That's my wording of it. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something to that extent. So that's the other side of that, is if we are noticing that there's something going on that is not, let's say, our, like, pattern, we'll say, quote unquote, and it's somebody else's, that's when we have to disengage from the moving into reaction to what will fulfill their pattern, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes we're players in other people's programs. Yeah. And we can do that consciously or not unconsciously. Yeah. And oftentimes I would say it's pretty unconscious, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah. And there are those signals or signs of like, oh, I usually don't behave this way, and now there's like this invitation to behave this way. No, you know what? I'm just gonna go in the other room. Or whatever. Yeah. I'm not gonna engage with that. I'm not gonna take the bait. Yeah. There's an example between us that's happened in the past. Can I share? Oh yeah. You don't know what the example. You might know, but go ahead. Sweet. So, so in the past, and I'll share from my perspective, and of course you can add to it. But at one point, when you and I first started living together, when we were roommates several years ago, there were opportunities that you being here and us being aligned as like women created, and friends, and you know, the connection that we have created opportunities where we could support one another. And there seemed to be this situation or this dynamic where something would come up and you needed support, or maybe I offered support to you or something of that receiving support, and it would like blow up and it wouldn't go over very well in my experience of it. And
that was a time where, for me, like, I checked in on it and I was like, okay, what's going on right now? You know, like, what's happening? Because I thought, like, this was copacetic. You know, I thought this was this is just not, like, let's say, playing out like how I would think it would play out. And then I started to become aware, and I think it was that you had said something to the effect of, like, and I don't want to, like, metagame you, so please, like, add your perspective into this, but you had said something to the effect around, you know, receiving programs from receiving and receiving from women in particular, and then it became, realization. Okay, so when in this dynamic, it would be really easy for me to, like, Kara needs something, to push away and fall into the rejection of offering support or allowing support to flow between us, because that was something you had acknowledged to me was going on for you. So then it was like, oh shit, I got to be, like, really conscious of this so I'm not falling into that program and I behave differently, because that's not the outcome I want, because I do want to support you, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't understand, like, at the time quite exactly why that was happening. And then once that came up, I was able to then choose something different. And I saw a noticeable difference between exchanges that happened between us and the support coming, like, being, like, the circuit, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah. I vaguely remember that. Do you have, like, a specific example?
There is an example of, well, I mean, when you lived here, there was, I guess, a number of times where, like, there's, you know, you're living in the house and things like that, or borrowing the car.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So, yes, that's a good example. So the negative program, mm-hmm. we won't psychoanalyze, but there was a negative program of, it's difficult for me to ask for help, mm-hmm. especially for women, and even just asking for, like, support or a favor or whatever, right? Or borrowing, in this case, your car, because I didn't have a car at the time. And it was so difficult. It was so difficult mm-hmm. of just, like, and we had talked about it even, like, we had come up with clear agreements of, this is, you know, if you want to use it this time, and, you know, I'll help pay mm-hmm. for this, and, you know, it was all, like, clear. And yet, despite that, there was still this energy of, like, oh, I can't, or it'll be, like, weird, or I'm, you know, not good enough, or I shouldn't be here, like, all of these programs, right, around like why it was bad, why I was in this situation to begin with and stuff, all ego, right? But then I do remember expressing that to you, just like, hey, you know what, I have this negative program running, and it's really hard for me to ask for help in general, but especially to, you know, my best friend, another woman, and a powerful woman, and, you know, I could use some help with this to get over it, if you don't mind. Is that cool? Yeah, sure, that's cool. So I think one time there was a situation, I don't remember the details, but I think it was something along the lines of, Kara, just take the car, it's fine, you know, I'll, like, move my appointment to tomorrow or whatever, I don't remember. It's like, oh, thank you, Ash, that's so helpful, because I was going to ask you, but I was having trouble, and you know, and we mm-hmm. talked about it, and it was good. So yeah, having that clarity and even mm-hmm. clear communication is super important, even if it's just something as simple as, I have this negative thing running, and it's not about you, it's my thing, but if you agree with your support, it'd be great to just be aware of that, right. So that, one, you don't fall into it, too, and also I don't co-create it unconsciously, right. and became conscious of it.
And it wasn't that you're asking me to be responsible, like, hey, this is my trigger, so
right.
just don't press the trigger, you know.
Right.
It's
not at
like
all,
that, because that's totally different energy.
Yeah.
But there's an energy of, like, what I had noticed before that and becoming aware was, there was, like, kind of walking on eggshells around it, like, probably from both of us, at least my experience felt like walking on eggshells and trying to communicate clearly what felt comfortable in an exchange of, like, setting up, like, supportive, like, let's say exchanges is the best way to put it.
Healthy boundaries,
maybe healthy boundaries, or, like, you know, we'll say, for example, using the car, what felt supportive to me in that exchange of using the car mm-hmm. was, you know, not easy to communicate. And I probably also had, like, my stuff going on too, but once I became aware of like that particular dynamic, it was like, oh, okay, now I know I'm not going to walk on eggshells around this, because now I see where this is coming from.
Right.
You know, and now I can be conscious, and then it was like so different, you know, and now it's like even more, it's like, it's so different, you know. I can't think of ways that I've supported you lately, but I know it happened.
Yeah, you don't do it at all.
But I just can't think of it off the top of my head, but I know it's happened, you know. So yeah, don't worry, I got it, or whatever, you know. And or when you ask, right? Oh, let's say the dog. Right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
say,
that's a great
like,
example.
How many times I remind you, hey, if you're going to be gone all day, just, like, let me know, and I can walk the dog and take her out, right? Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And it's such a good point, because I remember specifically needing to process some stuff around, like, oh, it's difficult for me to ask to borrow the car. Huh, that's interesting. Okay. And then I would like look at the program or the bundle of energy and then do the fear processing exercise on it. And like, holy smokes, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Just being like owning my stuff, you know, and responding to it in that way.
Or you would ask, and then you and I would have a total miscommunication, and then it would blow up. And it would be like a terrible like conversation. It was like,
yeah.
You know, so it's like, and not on your part, but it was like we were both players in that dance, right? Yeah. It was definitely a co-creation.
Yeah.
So point being to all of that is just the co-creation, or that like we aren't creating in isolation. So also just becoming aware, and it's not a matter of like projecting onto people and saying you're running a negative program, knock it off.
Yeah.
You know?
Or, hey, Ash, you're responsible for my negative program, so do this. It's not that
exactly.
either. No.
Like, I need you to enable my negative program, so make me comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, no.
That's not how that works.
So it's not that at all, but it is becoming how aware and conscious and responsible to how we engage. Mm-hmm. And that might be stepping out of the way.
Yeah.
And maybe that's saying, like, you know, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't have a good example, but
well, on the flip side, you know, we've talked about negative programs, but there's also positive programs too, where we can create really cool high frequency programs as well. And we talk a lot about the negative because, you know, we're like stepping out of the dark light and becoming empowered and all these things. But on the other side of it is not just processing stuff, but consciously creating the things we want, you know?
Yeah.
So one of the positive programs that I've been implementing into my life is just more easy ways to go into like really cool mystical experiences. Mystical being like, you know, we're at Sunday lunch, and you know, we used to do the Sunday lunch, Sunday dinner at the Shaman Shack for years and years, you know. And then this co-creation happened of like, hey, let's sit in pure heart for an hour every week. It's like, wow, that's super cool. Or when, you know, we hang out, it's like, oh, hey, let's do a quick connection exercise. So we do one of the tools, or reading and walk with me now assignments and posts. Like, there are all of these ways for, to me, that mystical, magical, high frequency, quote unquote, excuse to tap into those energies has become manifest and abundant in my life. Whereas, you know, 6-7 years ago, there was like no lick of meditations and they were hard to find. But now there's like so much like homework and interesting, cool things happening, both on, you know, public Telegram channels for Inelia Benz and IBA, but also Walk With Me Now. And then even just the stuff we do and our community does, like, hey, let's go for a hike and find crystals, or, you know, bringing magic into the daily life. That feeling of expansion of awareness and the quote-unquote excuses to do that proactively. Because before it was really difficult for me to have a daily practice. And by reprogramming the approach, for me, it's become a lot easier, not only in setting the intention to sit down, but also having the program of, it doesn't just have to be in that sitting down an intention for that type of experience to come in. Yep. It can come in with my co-creators like you, or our community and the broader community with iBenz Academy and everyone else who's playing these amazing high frequency games. So it's just one example of a positive program that you can co-create too. And it's also that other side of empowerment that feels important.
Okay, so I have two other examples now. One, to the earlier example I couldn't think of, was responding to a negative pattern that maybe somebody else is carrying, that obviously there's an open door. There's something there for us to be able to fit and play that game. But the alternative would be, hey, Ash, can I borrow your car?
Oh.
Sure, here's the keys.
Simple.
And make it easy. But I think it wasn't easy because we were playing that game like together. We were playing out that pattern.
Yeah.
So that was one,
yeah.
right? Then the other, to what you're saying, is earlier it came up. So I grew up with the superstition, let's say, that when your left palm is itchy, that means money is coming.
Ooh.
And I think it was like a friend's dad. When I was a kid, we were at a friend's house and he was talking about it, I was like, oh, cool.
That's a good
I like
one.
it. So every time my left palm would get itchy, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Money's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got older, I started to reinforce that pattern. And so now it's like my left palm itches, I itch it, I scratch it, and then I'm like, ooh, money's coming. Yeah, more please.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I open my field to receive.
Yep.
So it's a positive pattern, if you will, or learned program, belief system. I don't know what you want to call it. We'll say pattern for the sake of this conversation. But it's positive and one that I'm reinforcing that pattern. So my left palm itches, I scratch it, and then I open my field to receive.
Yep. And I noticed you did that even just earlier today, and I was like, oh, that's right. You have that program. I want that program. I'm copying you. And that's the other aspect of this energy, too, is like we can copy our high frequency programs, like we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that one's so simple and easy, and it's just like super cool, you know, like, oh yeah, I want the itchy left palm, knowing that money's coming. Yes, please, I'll take that.
Yeah. And there was a moment in it too, I was like, oh, but what if it itches all the time? I was like, oh well. We'll be good.
And you can always change your mind, right?
Yeah, totally. Just change the communication with my body.
Exactly.
And I just reinforce with her, oh, thanks for letting me know.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep. And it could turn into something else.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. We can always change our mind.
Yep.
Whether it's a negative pattern or a positive pattern. And that's key, right? Because we're empowered. We're the ones dictating how to live our lives and what experiences we have.
Yep.
So left itchy palms. Yes, please. Hey. I'll take that. Yay. I feel complete. Do you feel complete?
Me too. Yeah.
Yay. Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today.
All right. And if you haven't connected with us in our newsletter, you can go to iBenzAcademy.com and sign up for our newsletter. You can follow and subscribe to this podcast because, well, why wouldn't you?
And join us on Telegram too, because we send out some fun stuff on there.
Exactly.
Connect. It's all about connection. So we'll see you there.
All right. Until next time.
Bye.
Ciao.